Put your palm flat against your chest, right now, and hold it there. That warmth pressing back into your hand. 37 degrees, give or take. You have carried it every second of your life, awake and asleep, and you have never once had to think about it. Here is the plain answer to where that warmth goes when your body finally cools. It doesn't go anywhere. It stops being made. Warmth is not a substance you contain and then lose. It's an event, happening trillions of times a second, and cooling is simply that event ending. But that answer, clean as it sounds, is almost useless on its own, because it hides the strangest fact in all of thermodynamics, which is that your body has been leaking that warmth away, without pause, your entire life, and the only reason you're still warm is that you have been rebuilding it faster than physics can steal it. The moment you stop rebuilding, physics doesn't do anything dramatic. It just keeps doing what it was always doing, and that is the part almost nobody understands. The part that changes what death by cooling actually is. So let's ask the first honest question. If warmth is an event and not a thing, what exactly is the event? The answer lives inside a structure so small that 8,000 of them would fit across the width of a human hair. The mitochondrion, the power plant inside nearly every cell you own. Right now, in the muscle of the hand you're holding to your chest, there are somewhere between 200 and 2,000 mitochondria per cell. And inside each one there is a membrane folded like a crumpled letter to pack more surface into less space. Across that membrane, your cells are doing something that sounds like nonsense until you see the model. They are pumping protons, hydrogen atoms stripped of their electrons, from one side of the membrane to the other, building up a crowd of them on the outer side. Picture a dam, water pumped uphill, held behind a wall, straining to get back down. That pent-up crowd of protons is your dam, and the pressure it holds is called the proton-motive force. When those protons are finally allowed to rush back through a tiny molecular turbine, an enzyme with the ungainly name ATP synthase, which physically spins, a rotor turning at up to 100 rotations per second inside you at this moment. The rush drives the manufacture of ATP, the molecule that pays for everything your body does. But here's where warmth enters, and here's the thing most people never hear. That dam leaks. It was never meant to be watertight. Some of those protons slip back across the membrane without ever touching the turbine, without doing any useful work at all, and every proton that leaks releases its energy as pure heat. Your warmth is a controlled inefficiency. It is the friction of a machine that was designed to be a little bit wasteful on purpose. How wasteful? Roughly a quarter of all the resting energy your body burns leaks straight out as heat, through a single tissue you probably don't even know you have. So what is that tissue, and why has almost no one told you it exists? It's called brown adipose tissue, brown fat, and it sits mostly across your upper back, along the spine, and in a collar around the base of your neck. Ordinary fat, the white kind, stores energy and does nothing warm. Brown fat does the opposite. It's stuffed with mitochondria so densely they turn the tissue rust brown, and it carries a protein found almost nowhere else in the body, uncoupling protein 1, sometimes called thermogenin. Think of thermogenin as a hole punched deliberately in the dam wall. It lets protons pour back through with the turbine bypassed entirely, so none of that energy becomes ATP, and all of it becomes heat. Brown fat is a furnace whose only product is warmth. Infants are packed with it, which is why a newborn can hold body temperature without shivering. And for decades, physiologists assumed adults lost it completely. They were wrong. In 2009, 3 separate teams, one at Harvard, publishing in the New England Journal of Medicine, scanned adults with PET imaging and found active brown fat lighting up across the neck and shoulders of grown men and women when the room got cold. The furnace was still there. It had simply gone quiet. Now hold that in mind, because we're going to come back to it, and it's going to matter more than you'd expect for a video that started with a question about death. Let me ask the next one. If your warmth is constantly leaking out of you, where does it actually go? Not vaguely, physically. Through what door does the heat leave your body? There are 4 doors, and knowing them tells you exactly what happens when a body cools for the last time. The first door is radiation. Every warm object throws off invisible infrared light, and you are no exception. At this moment you are glowing in the infrared like a dull ember, shedding somewhere near 60% of your resting heat as light your eyes can't see. A thermal camera doesn't detect your temperature directly. It photographs the light you are radiating away. The second door is convection. The thin shell of air touching your skin gets warmed, becomes lighter, and rises off you in a slow, invisible plume. Stand still in a cool room, and you are sitting at the bottom of your own private updraft, a column of your own lost warmth streaming toward the ceiling. The third door is conduction, warmth passing directly into anything solid you touch, which is why a metal chair feels colder than a wooden one at the identical temperature. The metal isn't colder, it just carries your heat away faster, and your skin reads speed of loss as cold. The fourth door is evaporation, every gram of sweat or breath moisture that leaves you carrying a fixed packet of heat with it. So here's a question worth sitting with. If you're losing heat through 4 doors every second, why doesn't your temperature simply drift down toward the room? Why has it held at 37 for every waking and sleeping hour of your life, steadier than almost any machine you own? The answer is a thermostat, and it sits in a piece of your brain the size of an almond called the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus reads the temperature of the blood flowing past it, compares that reading to a set point burned into your biology, and issues corrections faster than you can notice. Too cold, and it orders the small muscles under your skin to clamp the blood vessels shut, pulling warm blood inward and leaving your fingers to cool as sacrificial territory. Too warm, and it flings those same vessels open and turns on the sweat. It is running a control loop right now, this second, that you will never feel. And if you've ever wondered why your hands and feet go cold long before the rest of you, why you can be perfectly warm at your core with ice block fingers, that's not poor circulation failing you. That's the thermostat succeeding. Your body is deliberately abandoning the outposts to defend the capital. Now, let's follow this all the way down, because a video about warmth that flinches from the cold ending isn't worth your time. What actually happens, hour by hour, when the furnace stops being fed? Start with the mildest version, the one that happens to living people every winter. When your core drops from 37 to around 35 degrees, the hypothalamus fires its loudest alarm, shivering. Shivering is nothing more than your skeletal muscle abandoning coordinated movement and vibrating uselessly on purpose, converting fuel to heat through friction. The same waste heat trick as brown fat. Run through your biceps and thighs instead. A hard shiver can multiply your heat production 5-fold. It is a magnificent emergency system, and it has a fatal weakness. It runs on fuel, and it runs on the very warmth it's trying to protect, because the enzymes that release that fuel are themselves temperature sensitive. Which raises the harder question. What happens when the core keeps dropping and the enzymes start to slow? Here we reach a piece of physics so clean it feels almost cruel. Nearly every chemical reaction in your body speeds up when warm and slows when cold. And the rough rule, worked out by the Swedish chemist Svante Arrhenius in 1889, describing all chemistry, not just yours, is that reaction rates roughly halve for every 10 degrees of cooling. Your metabolism isn't just powered by warmth, your metabolism is warmth, and warmth is your metabolism, and the two cannot be separated because they are the same event described twice. So as the body cools, the reactions that generate heat slow down, which lets the body cool further, which slows the reactions more. Cold begets cold. Below about 30 degrees Celsius, shivering stops entirely. The muscle is now too cold to run the reaction that would warm it. The last defense goes silent, and the 4 doors are left standing wide open with nothing pushing back. If any of this is landing, if you've just understood for the first time that your warmth is a fire you've been feeding your whole life and not a possession you hold, then subscribe, because there's a turn coming in about 4 minutes that reverses everything I've just told you, and it's the real reason I made this. The cold ending is not actually the strange part. The strange part is what physics does with the heat afterward, and almost nobody tells that half. But first, one honest correction. Because I'd rather you trust me than be impressed. You'll sometimes hear that the human body radiates about 100 watts of heat, roughly a bright old light bulb, and that this proves how much energy we throw off. The 100-watt figure is real for a person at rest, but it gets stretched in the retelling into claims that a crowded room is heated entirely by the people in it, or that you could power devices off your own glow. The wattage is honest. The conclusions people hang on it usually aren't. You radiate a light bulb's worth of heat, yes, but you also lose it to 4 doors constantly, and the net you could ever capture is a small fraction of that. The number is true. The story built on it is usually inflated. Now let me deliver on that reversal, because everything so far has treated cooling as loss. warmth draining out of a body until there's none left. And on the scale of your life, that framing is fine. But it is not what physics actually says is happening, and the real picture is stranger, and I think a little bit consoling. Here is the collision I want to bring in. From a field that has nothing to do with medicine. The first law of thermodynamics. The flat law of the universe. Energy is never lost. It cannot be created, and it cannot be destroyed. It only changes address. So when your warmth leaves your body, not one particle of that energy vanishes. Every infrared photon you radiate travels outward at the speed of light and warms whatever it strikes. The wall, the window, the cold night sky. Eventually the depths of space itself. Every plume of convected air you shed carries its heat up to mix with the room. The warmth you lose isn't destroyed. It's redistributed. It becomes part of everything around you. And this points at the deeper law, the second one, the one Rudolf Clausius set down in 1865 and that governs the direction of every event in the universe. Entropy. Heat flows only one way on its own, from more concentrated to less, from hot to cold, from ordered to spread out. A warm body in a cool room is a concentration of energy, an unlikely little peak, and the universe relentlessly smooths peaks. Your entire life, thermodynamically, has been one long act of defiance, a pocket of concentrated, organized energy holding itself against a universe whose only tendency is to even everything out. Every meal you've ever eaten was fuel spent buying one more day of staying uneven. So think about what death by cooling actually is, seen through that lens. It isn't the warmth being taken from you. It's you stopping the fight, and the universe finishing a job it had been patiently working at the whole time. The heat doesn't disappear. It disperses. The concentration that was you spreads out and becomes indistinguishable from the room, and then the building, and then the air, and the sharp line between your warmth and the world's warmth, a line that was always more accounting than reality, simply dissolves back into the average it came from. There's a recognition here I want to name, because you've felt it. Lie next to someone and feel the warmth coming off their skin, that soft, radiant heat across the small gap between you. You were never feeling their body. You were catching the infrared photons they were losing, the exact same warmth that, at the end, keeps going and doesn't come back. What we call the heat of another person is literally their warmth on its way out of them and into us. Intimacy, in strict physical terms, is the sharing of thermal loss. I find that oddly beautiful, and I suspect I'm not the only one. If that reframed something for you, hit like. It's the one signal that pushes this in front of someone else who's only ever thought of body heat as something you have, rather than something you're constantly giving away. Now let's return to the furnace I told you to remember, the brown fat across your shoulders, because it closes a loop and answers a question you might not have thought to ask. If warmth is just leaked energy, why did evolution build a tissue whose only purpose is to leak on command? Why waste fuel making heat you'll only lose again? Because for a warm-blooded animal, the leak is the point. A reptile is at the mercy of its Arrhenius curve. Cold morning, slow lizard, every reaction sluggish, until the sun does the work. You broke free of that. By burning fuel to hold 37 degrees no matter what the room does, you bought yourself a nervous system that runs at full speed in the dark, in winter, at 3 in the morning. The warmth you constantly lose is the toll you pay for a brain that never has to wait for sunrise. Brown fat is the tissue that lets a mammal pay that toll fast, in a burst, without shivering, a dedicated furnace for buying speed out of the cold. And here's the part that turns physics into something you can use tomorrow. That brown fat, the stuff researchers assumed adults had lost, responds to cold. In studies out of the Netherlands, led by researchers at Maastricht University, and published around 2013, adults exposed to mild cold, a room at around 17 degrees Celsius for a couple of hours a day over 10 days, measurably grew and activated their brown fat, and their bodies got better at burning fuel to make heat. You don't need an ice bath. You don't need to suffer. Mild, tolerable cold, a slightly cooler bedroom, a walk in autumn air without immediately reaching for the heaviest coat, appears to be enough to keep that furnace from going dormant. The tissue that keeps you warm is trained by the very cold it protects you from. Deny it all challenge, live always at a climate-controlled 22 degrees, and the furnace quietly bricks itself up from disuse. Now, I want to be straight about the limits here. How much brown fat matters for an adult's overall metabolism is still genuinely debated. Some physiologists think it's a meaningful contributor to how many calories you burn. Others think that in most adults it's too small a tissue to move the needle much. The heat it makes is real. Whether it's enough to matter for your weight or your metabolism, the honest answer is, it depends on who you ask, and the research isn't finished. What isn't in dispute is that the tissue exists in adults, that it makes heat by uncoupling the proton dam, and that cold wakes it up. The rest is still being argued in the journals, and I'd rather tell you that than sell you certainty nobody has yet. So let me pull the whole thing into one frame before the last turn. Your warmth is not a possession. It's a rate, the rate at which trillions of tiny leaks in trillions of tiny dams release energy as heat, faster than 4 open doors can carry it away. The hypothalamus holds that balance to a razor's edge. Brown fat can throw fuel on the fire when the cold demands it. And underneath all of it runs the second law of thermodynamics, patiently pulling every concentration of energy back toward the flat average of everything, waiting for the day the pumping stops. Which brings the last question, the one I think is really underneath the whole video. If your warmth is constantly leaving you and constantly being remade, if the specific heat in your hand right now will be gone into the room within seconds and replaced by heat your mitochondria haven't even generated yet, then in what sense is the warmth ever yours at all? You don't own your body heat. You rent it, moment to moment, from the fuel you burn, and you're evicted from every packet of it within seconds of making it. What you call being warm is not a state. It's a throughput, a river you're standing in, not a pool you're holding. And when a body finally cools for the last time, nothing is lost in the way we mean when we say loss. The pumping stops, the dams go still. The last generated warmth walks out through the 4 doors, radiates into the walls and the sky, mixes into the moving air, and rejoins the enormous, patient average it was always briefly borrowed from. The universe doesn't take your warmth, it welcomes it home. I'd bet most of you have felt someone's warmth linger on a chair after they stood up, and thought nothing of it. Tell me in the comments, whose warmth is the one you still remember being close to? Be honest. And if this changed how you feel your own body heat even a little, share it with someone who runs cold, someone who's always reaching for another blanket, because they of all people should know what that warmth actually is. You were never a thing that had heat. You were heat, happening, for a while.